The Living Zen-podcast is a gift from the Victoria Zen Centre. If you enjoy it, please forget about making a donation. Instead, rate it, review it, and share it with a friend that you think will enjoy it as much as you did. You may also consider purchasing the Living Zen podcast app, which is now available on the iTunes App Store. Thank you for listening. Dogen Zenji, a Zen teacher from about 1200, proposed this attitude or this perspective of practice, of Zen practice. That to study Zen is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to manifest together with all things endlessly. When we come into this zendo, when we take up this seat, this posture of practice, it's not to study with our brains like some subject that we've got in university. It's not to think about, to dissect, to analyze what it is that we are thinking or what it is that we're feeling. We have to be willing to step outside of the perspective of the observer, the separate observer. The term Zazen, which is the traditional term for what we're doing, it's often translated as meditation. It originally comes from the Sanskrit term dhyana. Dhyana is better translated, I think, more accurately translated as absorption or even dissolution. When we come to take up this practice, when we come to enter into this formal meditation experience, we find that we are objects, that we hold ourselves as things. We come into the meditation hall carrying our mask, ourselves, all of the things that we like and that we dislike, all of the things that we want and all of the things that we want to avoid. When we come into this environment, we're asked to carry our hands just so. Maybe we're asked to take the hats off of our heads or walk around this particular way. And as soon as we're asked that, as soon as that's pressed on us, we react, we respond. Oh, that's not the way that I was going to do it. Or, what's the big deal? And in the end, there is no big deal. It's not a big deal. But what we are asked to do in this practice is to investigate this thing that we call a self, this personhood that we hang on to, that we spend so much of our time trying to hold up, to inflate, and to expand. This thing that we spend so much of our time trying to protect and keep from harm, from difficulty, from discomfort. So in formal practice, we create this environment which is stable, which is fundamentally safe and secure. And all an individual is asked to do is to enter into it wholeheartedly, to manifest themselves harmoniously with the practice as it is established. And as we take up this posture and we sit down, we find that we oscillate back and forth between this activity of dissolving, of melting into the practice, of allowing the separation that we hold between who it is that we think we are and what it is that we're doing. As we exhale, we can experience this melting away. The other activity that we engage in is the plus activity, the arising activity, where we begin to form, where we begin to arise, where we begin to differentiate and separate who we are from what we're doing. Oh, what is this now? Now I've got to bow. Now I've got to walk. Now I've got to pay attention to what the person in front of me is doing because I'm supposed to keep in step. But even in these activities, even in these manifestations, we also can experience, we also practice letting go into, so that we can experience the activity of walking together with all things, without separation. Not I am walking and you are walking, but this whole cosmos is manifesting in this moment as the activity of walking. There is no I that's separate. But for most of us, and for the most part, we find that what we see, what we experience, is the bubbling up of our conscious, intellectual, busy mind. We experience the bubbling up of our emotions, our resistances, our discomforts, our fears. We witness that just as we do this simple activity of sitting and breathing, the true content of our mind and our heart reveals itself. It's important to understand that this stuff doesn't just bubble up when we're doing sitting meditation, when we take up this posture and we start to breathe in and out, paying attention to our breath. But that these thoughts and these emotions are constantly churning throughout our day. These fears and anxieties and other emotions that arise in our practice aren't only present in the moments that we're engaged in seated meditation, but are present in every moment of our lives, but we're not aware of them. Our aversions to this and our desperation to possess that guide our movements, guide our choices, guide our decisions in each and every moment of our lives, and for the most part, we're asleep. We're completely unaware of what it is that we're doing and why. This practice is called Buddhism. The word Bud is just a Sanskrit term that means to wake up. Our practice here is to wake up, to see what it is that's actually going on, what it is that we're actually doing as we walk through our lives. And to begin to clarify this and to let go of some of the things that we hang on to that keep us separate from the very activity of the unfolding of our lives. Now, human relationship is very complex. All of the kinds of jobs that we have and studies that we pursue and places that we like to hang out are all very complex. And there are innumerable variables in each of those situations. So when we come to practice, we like to bring it back to a very simple experience. The environment is established. The form is laid out. There are people responsible for the time, for the light, for the circulation of air, for the care of each and every person in the meditation hall. Every person is asked to take up this very simple posture. And all we're asked to do is sit. Simply sit and breathe. To fully come into this unfolding activity of your life and see and experience, to smell, to feel, to know what it is to be alive in this very moment. We find when we try to do this, that even this very simple activity of sitting and breathing our lives is actually rather difficult. Our minds, our emotions, our physical bodies are constantly darting this way and that. We've spent 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years engaging in this blind habit pattern of distracting ourselves, of making our choices based on our fears, based on our desires, based on the idea that we can increase this thing we call I. This simple practice is one that we can use to come to understand what this activity is, what this thing that we call our life is. Rather than holding up this idea of a self which stands separate from everything in this cosmos, we can engage in this simple practice of dhyana, Zazen, dissolution, and realize that we are not separate. Realize that in this moment unfolds the activity of our lives, and there is nowhere else for us to be.
The Living Zen podcast is a gift from the Victoria Zen Centre. If you enjoy it, please forget about making a donation. Instead, rate it, review it, and share it with a friend that you think will enjoy it as much as you did. You may also consider purchasing the Living Zen podcast app, which is now available on the iTunes App Store. Thank you for listening.